I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to sit in front of a screen and share my deepest frustrations with strangers. But here I am. Something happened to me a few weeks ago, and I still can't wrap my head around it. I can barely talk to anyone about it, and honestly, I don't even know who to trust anymore. I'm hoping, maybe, by putting this out there, I'll find some clarity or at least some other voices to help me understand. It all started with a phone call. A normal, everyday call that anyone might get, except it wasn't. I had been sitting at home, scrolling through some boring news on my phone, when my wife, Emma, called me. She didn't usually call unless it was important, so I picked up right away. But the first words out of her mouth threw me off completely. "I think you should leave." I blinked. I couldn't process it. What? What do you mean? There was a brief pause. I could tell she was trying to decide how to phrase it, like she was choosing her words carefully. "I'm at the party," she said, her voice somewhat distant. "I think it's better if you leave." Now, you have to understand, I wasn't supposed to be at this party. Emma had been invited to an event by a friend of hers, someone I didn't know all that well. I didn't even want to go. The last few months had been rough between us, and I didn't really feel like socializing, especially with her friends. She'd asked me to come, of course, but I just wasn't in the mood for it. So, I stayed home, figuring she'd have a good time on her own. So, hearing her say that she thought it was better if I left, it made no sense. "Emma," I said, trying to stay calm, "I'm not there. I'm at home." "I know," she replied quickly, "but I think it's better if you leave this whole situation alone. I don't want to talk about it now." I felt like I'd missed some kind of cue. This wasn't how our conversations usually went. It wasn't just that she wanted me to leave the party. She was asking me to step out of something without explaining why. And that right there felt like the first crack in something that had been pretty solid before. "Emma, what's going on?" "What?" "I can't explain right now." She cut me off, her voice distant. "But I'll be fine. I'll explain everything when I get home. Just don't come here. Please." The line went dead, and I was left sitting there, confused. No explanation. No context. Just a request to walk away, to stay out of whatever was going on. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the phone in my hand. I kept replaying the conversation in my head. Why would she say that? What could possibly be happening at this party that would make her ask me not to be there? Why the sudden urgency? The more I thought about it, the more it felt wrong. I don't know why I did it. I didn't even know what I was looking for, but I found myself getting dressed and driving to the venue. I couldn't just sit there, waiting for her to come back with some explanation that didn't make sense. By the time I arrived, the party was in full swing. People were laughing, talking, and the music was louder than I expected. I stepped inside, feeling immediately out of place. I wasn't supposed to be here. I didn't know anyone, but I had to know what was going on. Why had she called me, asking me to leave without saying a word? I wandered around the house, trying to keep to the shadows, watching people chat and mingle. Emma was nowhere in sight. I checked the kitchen, the living room, and the backyard, but there was no sign of her. Then, I saw someone I didn't expect, her friend, Lucas, standing by the fireplace, talking with some woman I didn't recognize. His smile was wide, his posture a little too relaxed. But that wasn't what caught my attention. It was the look on his face when he saw me. He froze, mid-sentence, and his eyes shifted to the hallway, like he was waiting for something. That glance lasted a fraction of a second, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. There was something off about the way he looked at me. I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't just an outsider in this situation. I was the last person they wanted to see. But why? Suddenly, a familiar voice broke through my thoughts. "Gregor." Emma's voice was sharp. "What are you doing here?" I turned, and there she was, standing at the end of the hallway, arms crossed, her face unreadable. She didn't look angry, but she didn't look happy either. There was no warmth in her eyes, no excitement. She just looked guarded. "I came to check on you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You called." I didn't know what was going on. She stepped closer, but there was an almost imperceptible distance between us. "I didn't want you to come. You should go." There it was again. That coldness. I couldn't figure out if it was directed at me, or if it was something else entirely. "What's going on, Emma? Why did you call me and tell me to leave?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated, her eyes flickering nervously. For a moment, I thought she might actually tell me. But then she shook her head and let out a small sigh. "I'll explain later, I promise," she said, her tone sharp and dismissive. Just go home, Gregor. Please. And there it was. The final push. I could have pressed her for more, could have demanded answers. But in that moment, something inside me just froze. Something in her words didn't sit right with me. Something didn't add up. Without saying another word, I turned and walked out the door, leaving the party behind. I didn't look back. The drive home was quiet, but my mind was loud. Why had she asked me to leave? What was I missing? And what was Lucas doing here, acting like I was the last person he wanted to see? I couldn't answer any of those questions. Not then. But what I did know was this. Whatever was happening in that house, I wasn't part of it anymore. And whatever Emma was hiding from me, it was bigger than I ever imagined. And this was only the beginning. When I got home, I sat in my car for a long time, the engine running but my mind in complete chaos. I tried to convince myself I was just overreacting. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe Emma was just stressed or dealing with something personal. But the feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. It gnawed at me, relentless and cold. I kept thinking about the way she looked at me when she saw me at the party. It wasn't the look of a wife who missed her husband, or even the surprise of someone caught off guard. It was something deeper, something that made me feel like I wasn't welcome in her world anymore. It felt like I was intruding on a space that didn't belong to me, like I was a stranger. I waited for her to come home. I was pacing the living room, going over every single detail in my head, trying to make sense of what had happened. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was a text from Emma. "We need to talk. I'm on my way." The knot in my stomach tightened even more. I could feel the heaviness in those 6 words. She wasn't just coming home. She was coming back to explain something. Something big. I had no idea what it could be, but I knew it wasn't going to be good. When Emma walked through the door, she looked exhausted, her face pale. But it wasn't just her appearance that worried me. It was the way she carried herself. Her eyes avoided mine. She set her bag down without a word and walked into the kitchen. There was an uncomfortable silence hanging in the air between us. "Emma," I said quietly, trying to break the tension. "What happened back there? Why did you want me to leave the party?" She froze for a second, her back to me, as if the question had taken her off guard. Then she turned, a forced smile on her face. I just didn't want you to see things that you wouldn't understand." I felt a flash of anger rise in my chest. "Things I wouldn't understand?" I repeated, stepping closer. "You're my wife, Emma. I have a right to know what's going on." She sighed deeply, her shoulders slumping. "It's not that simple, Gregor. Please, just trust me. I promise I'll explain everything. But not right now. I need some time." Time? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're telling me I don't get to know what's happening in my own life until you decide it's convenient?" Her eyes flickered, and for a brief moment, I saw something else, something I couldn't place. She looked guilty, like she was hiding something. It was in the way she avoided my gaze, and the way her voice cracked when she spoke. "I just need time," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. And then, she left the room. Just like that. I stood there, dumbfounded. There was something deeply wrong here, and I could feel it. She wasn't just asking for space, she was shutting me out. Completely. I spent the rest of the night awake, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. My mind wouldn't stop. I kept thinking about the look on her face at the party, the way she told me to leave without any explanation. I kept replaying that moment over and over again. But the more I thought about it, the more confused I became. What was she hiding from me? And why was I the last to know? I wanted to confront her, to demand answers. But something inside me told me that the truth wasn't something I was ready for. But I had to find out. I had to know what was going on, even if it meant uncovering things I didn't want to face. And so I waited. But not passively. I started looking for clues, anything that might explain the strange behavior I was seeing. The first place I checked was her phone. It felt wrong, I'll admit, but at this point, I didn't know what else to do. I knew I was treading on dangerous ground, but there was no turning back now. I didn't find anything immediately, but then I saw a message that stood out, a message from someone named Ethan. I didn't recognize the name, but the tone of the messages made my stomach drop. It was clear from their conversation that Emma and Ethan were closer than I'd ever imagined. The messages weren't overtly romantic, but there was something in the way they talked, something that made me feel like I wasn't even a part of her life anymore. I sat there, staring at the screen, trying to breathe through the anger and confusion. Ethan. Who was he? Why had Emma been acting so strangely around him? What had I missed? As the pieces began to fall into place, I realized that whatever Emma was hiding, it was bigger than I had ever imagined. And I wasn't sure I was ready to find out what would happen next. But one thing was clear. I couldn't stay in the dark much longer. I couldn't sleep that night. The message from Ethan gnawed at me. I wasn't sure if I should confront Emma about it or just let it go, but deep down, I knew I couldn't. There was no way I could ignore this anymore. The small flickers of doubt that had been lingering in my mind were now raging fires. The next morning, I pretended everything was fine. Emma was acting like nothing had changed, greeting me with a quick smile and a kiss on the cheek before she rushed out the door for work. I didn't know whether to follow her or stay back, to push her for answers or just bide my time. But something told me I had to be patient, at least for now. The whole day felt like I was moving through a fog. I couldn't focus. All I could think about was that message. Ethan. Who was he? How long had he been in the picture? My mind was filled with questions, but there was no one to ask. I couldn't bring myself to approach Emma about it. Not yet. But by evening, the weight of the situation had become too much. I needed answers. I needed to know if my suspicions were true. That's when it happened. As I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through some old photos, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Emma. I'm going to be late tonight. I'll explain everything tomorrow, I promise. It was the same cryptic tone she had used before. There was something off about her words, something that sent a chill down my spine. I didn't respond. Instead, I sat there, staring at the message, my heart pounding in my chest. Was she trying to get me to back off? To forget about the strange tension between us? Then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification. A social media alert. It was a photo. A photo of Emma, smiling, standing next to Ethan at a restaurant. Her arm was around his waist. She looked carefree, like she had no worries in the world. The anger bubbled up in my chest. I had seen enough. This wasn't just a friendly colleague or a random acquaintance. This was something more. I didn't know what to do next. Should I call her? Confront her? Or should I wait, see where this went, and try to understand what was really going on? My thoughts were racing, but I couldn't sit still any longer. I had to know. I couldn't let this mystery sit in the dark any longer. I grabbed my coat and drove to the restaurant. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Part of me didn't even know if I was doing the right thing. But my mind wouldn't stop. I had to see this for myself. I had to know what was going on between them. As I pulled up to the place, I saw them right away. Emma and Ethan, sitting at a corner table, deep in conversation. Their heads were close, their voices low. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to run up to them, demand answers, but I couldn't. I was paralyzed by the sight of them together. Emma laughed at something Ethan said, and he smiled at her like they shared a secret. A secret that didn't involve me. I stayed hidden in the shadows, watching them for a while, my mind spinning. I had always trusted Emma. But now, standing in that dark corner of the restaurant, I realized I didn't know who she was anymore. I didn't know what this was. All I wanted was to ask her, to know the truth. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. I didn't know if I was ready for the truth, even though I knew I had to face it sooner or later. And as I turned to leave, I heard her laugh again. This time, it cut through me like a knife. I wasn't ready for the conversation we were going to have, but I knew it was coming. And when it did, I wasn't sure if I'd ever be the same again. I didn't sleep at all that night. My mind wouldn't stop. I kept replaying the image of Emma and Ethan, laughing together, their faces so close, like they were a couple. I should have been furious, but instead, I felt empty. Like I was watching something that should have mattered to me slip away, piece by piece. The next day, I didn't wait for her to come home. I couldn't. I had to confront her before I lost my nerve. When Emma walked through the door, she looked at me with a soft smile, but I could see the tension in her eyes. She knew something was coming. I didn't even greet her. I just took a deep breath and said, "We need to talk." She froze, the smile slowly fading. "What's going on, Gregor?" I didn't mince words. "Who's Ethan?" Her face went pale. For a moment, I thought she might collapse, but she steadied herself. "What are you talking about?" "The photo, Emma. The one I saw last night. You and Ethan, at that restaurant. His arm around you." She opened her mouth like she was about to speak, but no words came out. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out how to lie or what to say, but there was nothing she could do. The truth was out. "Gregor, it's not what you think," she finally said, her voice shaking. "It was just a work dinner. Nothing happened. We were just talking." Talking. I laughed bitterly. You looked like you were enjoying each other's company a little too much for just a conversation. What's going on, Emma? She sighed, sitting down on the couch. I didn't want to hurt you. I never meant for this to happen. Her voice broke as she spoke. But it did. I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest. Did what, Emma? What happened? She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes filled with regret. I'm sorry. I should have told you earlier. Ethan, he's someone I've been seeing. For the past few months. The words hit me like a slap across the face. My mind couldn't process it. What do you mean, seeing? Like cheating on me? She nodded, her face a mixture of shame and guilt. Yes, I never meant for it to go this far, but I don't know, Gregor. It just happened, and I got caught up in it. I could feel my world crashing down around me. All this time, all these months, I had no idea. How long? I forced the words out, though they tasted like ash in my mouth. A few months. I didn't want to tell you, didn't know how. I thought I could stop, but she trailed off, staring at her hands. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. How had I been so blind? How had I not seen it? I felt sick. But most of all, I felt betrayed. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted completely, had been hiding this from me for months. Why? I finally managed to ask. Why him? Why not talk to me? I don't know, she whispered, shaking her head. I guess I was just looking for something I wasn't getting. I didn't know how to fix it with you, Gregor. I didn't even know where to begin. Her words hit harder than anything else. It wasn't just about Ethan. It was about me, about us, and how far we had fallen apart without even realizing it. I could hear her voice, but all I could focus on was the emptiness in her eyes. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but instead, I just stood there, frozen. So that's it then? You've been seeing him behind my back, and now you're telling me because you can't keep the lie going? She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. I never wanted to hurt you, Gregor. This isn't easy for me. I'm not proud of it, but I think you deserve the truth. The truth. It didn't feel like the truth. It felt like a betrayal, like everything I thought we had was built on lies. You know, it's funny, I said, my voice trembling. Because you used to tell me we were different, that we were strong. But I guess that was all just words. Gregor, please, she reached out to me, but I took a step back. No, don't, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I don't know who you are anymore. I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. I needed to get away, to clear my head. But no matter how far I went, there was no escaping the cold, empty feeling that had settled in my chest. Emma had broken something I didn't think could ever break. And no matter what happened next, I knew things would never be the same again. I didn't go back home that night. I couldn't. My mind was spinning with 1,000 thoughts, all of them fragments of a life I thought I knew, shattering in front of me. I drove aimlessly, barely aware of where I was going, just needing to get away from the suffocating silence of the apartment and the weight of Emma's confession. I ended up at a park. It was late, and the streets were empty. I walked through the dark, quiet pathways, the cold air biting at my skin, trying to breathe through the disbelief. I kept asking myself, how did this happen? How did I miss all the signs? How did I not see the cracks in our relationship? The trust one thought we had been completely shattered, and I was left trying to make sense of it all. I sat on a bench, staring at the empty swings in the distance, remembering how things used to be. The way we laughed together, the easy comfort of being in each other's company. But now, none of that felt real. It was all a lie. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my thoughts. I looked down at the screen. It was Emma. She had sent me a message. Gregor, please talk to me. I know I messed up, but I need you to understand. I'm sorry. Please come home. I stared at the words, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to go back and hear her out, to try to make sense of it all, to salvage something from this wreck. But another part of me knew I couldn't just let it go. I couldn't pretend like everything was fine, like it hadn't just shattered. I didn't reply. Instead, I just sat there, letting the cold wind swirl around me, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. The next few days were a blur. Emma tried to reach me repeatedly, calling, texting, even showing up at the apartment while I was at work. But I couldn't bring myself to face her, not yet. Not until I figured out what I wanted, what I needed. I couldn't stop thinking about Ethan. I didn't know if I hated him, if I felt sorry for him, or if I just wanted answers. Emma had been seeing him for months, and I was left in the dark the entire time. It didn't make sense. What did he offer her that I didn't? Was I just too blind to see it? Finally, I made a decision. I needed closure, whether I was ready for it or not. I picked up my phone and sent Emma a single text. We need to talk. Tomorrow. I'll be home at 7. I stared at the screen for a moment before hitting send. There was no turning back now. Whatever came next, I had to face it. The next evening, the tension in the air was almost suffocating. I sat on the couch, my mind racing with everything Emma had said, everything she hadn't said. The apartment felt too quiet, too still. I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat, steady and loud in my chest, as I waited. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, and with each passing second, I felt the weight of the conversation that was coming. When she finally walked through the door, my stomach twisted. She looked different, pale, exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red, and there was a strange hesitation in the way she stepped into the room, as if she were unsure of how to approach me. It hurt to see her like this, but the anger still simmered beneath the surface, and I wasn't sure I could control it. "Gregor," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm glad you agreed to talk." I didn't answer. I just watched her, feeling an unfamiliar chill between us. She crossed the room slowly, standing in front of me, but not close enough to touch. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I took a deep breath. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice was steadier than I felt. "Why did you hide it? Why didn't you just talk to me?" She flinched at the words, her eyes dropping to the floor. "I thought I could fix it, Gregor. I thought I could fix us before it got out of hand. I didn't want to hurt you." "And yet, you did," I replied, my voice sharper than I intended. "You hurt me a lot more by lying, by keeping this from me. I could have handled the truth, but I didn't get that, did I?" She took a step closer, her eyes pleading now. "Please, don't shut me out. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." But the more I tried to keep it together, the more I felt like I was losing myself. I didn't know what else to do. Her words hung in the air like a fragile thread, and for a moment, I almost believed her. She looked so sincere, so vulnerable. But then my mind flashed back to the picture of her with Ethan. The laughter, the closeness, the way she'd looked at him. No matter how sorry she sounded, that image wouldn't go away. "Do you love him?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. The moment it left my lips, I regretted it. But it was too late to take back. Emma froze. Her eyes widened slightly, and for a brief moment, I saw something in her expression that made my chest tighten. It wasn't just guilt. It was something deeper, something I didn't want to see. I don't know," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean for it to get to this point, Gregor. But when I'm with him, I feel like I'm actually seen. I don't feel invisible. And with you, it just felt like we were growing apart." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. She was telling me everything I feared, everything I had been trying to ignore. She didn't love me the way she used to. Somewhere along the way, we had drifted so far apart that it was too late to fix. Ethan had filled the space I couldn't. I stood up, suddenly feeling trapped. "So that's it. You just decided I wasn't enough for you anymore? That you needed someone else?" My voice broke, and I hated myself for it, but I couldn't hold it in. The pain was too raw. "No, that's not what I meant," Emma said, rushing to explain herself. "I didn't want it to happen like this. I didn't want to lose you. But somewhere along the way, I felt like I couldn't reach you anymore. Like we were two strangers in the same house." I stared at her, trying to make sense of it all. Part of me wanted to believe her, to forgive her, and try to rebuild what we had. But another part of me was crushed, the weight of her betrayal too heavy to ignore. I took a step back. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again, Emma. I don't know if we can go back from this." Her eyes filled with tears, and I could see the regret written all over her face. "I understand. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I hope, in time, you'll understand that I never wanted to hurt you. I lost my way." I stood there in the silence, her words echoing in my mind, but I couldn't find the strength to respond. I was torn between wanting to hold her, to tell her everything would be okay, and the part of me that wanted to walk away, to leave it all behind. But the reality was clear. Something fundamental had broken between us, and no amount of words could fix it. "I need some space," I said finally, my voice barely audible. "I need time to think about all of this." Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand, Gregor. I'm sorry. I truly am." I turned away, unable to look at her any longer. Every step I took away from her felt like one step further from the life we had built together. But at that moment, it felt like the only thing I could do. As I walked out of the apartment, I didn't know where I was going or what the future held. All I knew was that everything had changed, and I couldn't go back. Not anymore. The next few days felt like a blur. I didn't know how to act around Emma, so I chose to act like she wasn't there. It was easier that way. The apartment, once our sanctuary, now felt like a foreign place, and I couldn't escape the feeling of betrayal that clung to every corner. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. I didn't respond to Emma's messages or calls. It wasn't that I didn't want to hear her out. It was just that I wasn't sure I could handle any more of her apologies or explanations. I'd heard it all, and still, nothing felt real. Then, 3 days later, the knock came. It wasn't from Emma. It was from someone else. I opened the door, and standing there, looking almost like a stranger, was Ethan. He was wearing a casual jacket, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. His expression was unreadable, but there was a certain tension in his eyes. For a split second, I froze. Why was he here? What could he possibly want from me? Gregor, he said, his voice low. Can we talk? I stood there for a moment, not sure if I should slam the door in his face or invite him in. I didn't want anything to do with him, but something about his presence intrigued me. He wasn't here to gloat, and that much was obvious. Why are you here? I finally asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Ethan hesitated, then took a step forward. Look, I know you're probably pissed off at me, and you have every right to be, but I need you to hear me out. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. You want me to hear you out? After everything? I'm not here to make excuses, he said quickly, his voice steady but full of tension. I'm here to be honest with you. I crossed my arms, eyeing him suspiciously. Honest? About what? He looked me in the eye, as if trying to gauge whether or not I'd listen. About Emma. About the mess we've all found ourselves in. I wanted to shut the door and walk away, but there was something in his eyes, something raw, that made me pause. I didn't know what he was going to say, but something told me I wasn't going to like it. I never wanted this, Ethan continued. I never set out to hurt you, Gregor. But I think you deserve to know the full truth. Not just what Emma's told you, but the things she's been hiding. I felt my stomach twist at the words. What are you talking about? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan took a deep breath, and what came next shook me more than anything Emma had said. There's more to the story than you realize. I don't know how far you and Emma's marriage has fallen, but there's something she's been hiding from you, something that goes deeper than just me. I felt the air leave my lungs. What do you mean? I think you need to hear it from her, Ethan said, his eyes darkening. But I'm telling you, what's been going on isn't just about us. There's a reason she's been keeping things from you. I stared at him, trying to process his words. Was he trying to make me feel sorry for him? Or was he actually trying to help? Either way, something wasn't sitting right with me. You're telling me there's something more? I asked, my voice thick with suspicion. Ethan nodded. Yeah, and I think you're going to want to know what it is. I didn't know what I was expecting from him, but this wasn't it. Whatever was going on, it was bigger than any of us had imagined. And I knew, then, that I couldn't keep running from this. Not anymore. I stood there in the doorway, the weight of Ethan's words hanging heavy between us. The confusion and anger I'd been carrying for days felt even more tangled now. The last thing I wanted was to hear more secrets, more layers of betrayal. But there was something in Ethan's eyes that I couldn't ignore, a vulnerability, an urgency. Why come to me, Ethan? I asked, my voice strained. Why now? He took a slow breath, running a hand through his hair. Because I think you deserve to know the full truth. Emma's been torn up about everything, Gregor. She didn't want you to know, but I think you need to hear it from me. The silence stretched, but I didn't know what else to say. He had come all this way. Clearly, he wasn't here to fight or win anything. He was here to tell me something important. Emma's been struggling with something for a while now, Ethan said quietly. It's not just about us, and it's not just about her feelings for me. She's been dealing with a lot, and I think that's part of why things got so out of hand. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. What are you saying? She's been dealing with depression, Ethan continued, his voice softer now. For months, maybe longer. She didn't know how to talk to you about it. She was afraid if she did, you'd see her as weak. She pushed you away, not because she didn't love you, but because she didn't know how to ask for help. The words hit me harder than I expected. I had thought the worst. that she had simply fallen out of love with me, that I wasn't enough. But hearing this made me realize just how little I had known about what was going on inside her. She's been going to therapy, Gregor, Ethan added. I didn't know about it until recently, but she's trying. She was afraid to tell you because she didn't want to burden you, but now she feels like she's pushed you too far away. I think she just wanted to fix things on her own first. I ran a hand through my hair, my mind racing. All of this time, I'd been assuming the worst about Emma. I'd been angry, hurt, confused, but I hadn't even considered the possibility that she was battling something so personal, something so overwhelming, that she didn't know how to share it with me. I turned away from Ethan, pacing the room. She should have told me. I would have helped her. I think she was afraid, Ethan said, his voice gentle. Afraid that you'd look at her differently, or worse, leave her. She didn't want to be a burden, Gregor. I closed my eyes, trying to absorb everything. The woman I loved, the woman I thought had betrayed me, was struggling with something so much bigger than I had imagined, and I had been too blind to see it. I can't believe this, I muttered. I've been so angry. I should have known. Ethan stepped forward, his tone sincere. None of this is easy, man. But I think Emma wants a chance to explain it all to you. She's been waiting for you to come back. She's sorry for everything. I looked at him for a long moment. He wasn't just some guy I was angry at. He was a part of the bigger picture, and it seemed like he truly wanted to help, not make things worse. I need to talk to her, I said, my voice firm now. I need to hear it from her. Ethan gave a small nod. I think you should. She's at home, waiting for you. I didn't waste any more time. I thanked Ethan and headed straight for the apartment. My heart was heavy with everything I had learned, but for the first time in days, it wasn't filled with anger. It was filled with uncertainty, but also hope. When I walked through the door, Emma was sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. The sight of her tore at me, but I wasn't angry anymore. Emma, I said quietly, my voice thick. We need to talk. She looked up at me, her face filled with fear and relief all at once. Gregor, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I just didn't know how to tell you what was really going on. I sat beside her, taking her hand in mine. I don't know how this happened, Emma. I don't know how we got so far apart, but I want to understand. I want to help. She looked at me with a mix of surprise and gratitude, her eyes shining with tears. You're still willing to try? I don't know if we can go back to what we had, but I want to try. I want to be there for you. To work through this. Together. For the first time in days, a small smile tugged at the corners of her lips. I don't deserve you, Gregor. You're wrong, I said softly, brushing a stray tear from her cheek. We both made mistakes, but we can fix this, if you're willing to let me in. She nodded, her breath shaky. I'll try, I promise. And in that moment, something shifted. We both knew it wasn't going to be easy, but we were ready to rebuild, slowly, carefully, but with the kind of honesty we'd been missing. We both had a long way to go, but we weren't going to let each other go. And that, for the first time in weeks, felt like a fresh start.